Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry for the delay. It took a moment to turn off Mozart. Welcome this afternoon. My name is Ken, and I'm the program manager for Antioch University Continuing Education. I'm delighted to share this time with you this afternoon, and especially with the Antioch University Individualized Master of Arts program and the folks from Deeptime Network, Stephan Martin and Jennifer Morgan. Thank you all for tuning in. I have just a couple of tech notes. The first is that we will be recording this session this afternoon. I hope to live stream on YouTube. That connection didn't work, but I'll correct that once you begin. But we are now in live cloud recording, so that the recording of this session will be available and can be uploaded to YouTube if the live stream doesn't function for us this afternoon. If you have concerns about your image in a public video or a video that we will share for future, you're welcome to turn your camera off. Know that when you ask questions live, they may be on the video recording, and so I would advise you to use chat if that's a concern. My primary piece of advice would be to not be shy and please join the program and the conversation for today. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ashley Nielsen, the chair of the Individualized Masters of Arts program with Antioch University.
Thank you, Ken. As he said, I'm the chair of the Individualized Masters of Arts program. We are a transdisciplinary self-design program with focuses in social science and humanities. Students have the ability to pursue their passions by building their own degree plan and co-designing courses with mentors, professors, and fellow classmates. We have students that are just starting their degree, and we also have students that are coming back with graduate credit from courses that the program they didn't quite finish. So we have a lot of degree completers. I wanted to give a big thanks to the Deeptime Network for coming today and sharing your wisdom with us. And without further ado, I want to pass it on to Vanessa Cabrales, who is our program coordinator.
Hola, everybody. My name is Vanessa. I'm the program coordinator for the Individualized Masters of Arts. Thank you so much for taking some time to join us. So we've created these vital issues because we want to support radical shifts in perception. And so I think we can do that together as a community. And so I'm very excited to present the backgrounds of our two presenters. And so we have Jennifer Morgan. She's the president and founder of the Deeptime Network, is an award-winning author, storyteller, and educator. Her Universe Story Trilogy, Born with a Bang, From Lava to Life, and Mammals Who Morph are used in classrooms around the world and have received the Teacher's Choice Award and qualified as a Nautilus semi-finalist. Furthermore, she's received endorsements from Jane Goodall, Neil deGrasse Tyson, astronaut Edgar Mitchell, Thomas Berry, Brian Swim, and others. She is vice president of the American Teilhard Association. We have Stephan Martin, is an astronomer, educator, and author who has taught astronomy, physics, and consciousness studies at colleges, universities, and learning centers over 30 years. He has led workshops on the new cosmology at seminars and retreat centers across the US and Europe, and has been active in exploring multidisciplinary approaches to exploring the universe. He is currently director of the Deeptime Leadership Program at the Deeptime Network and adjunct faculty in the Consciousness and Transformative Studies graduate program at National University. And so with that, I'll go ahead and pass the torch over to Jennifer and Stephan. Again, thank you. And I'm so happy to be pollinating and supporting these different communities at this moment. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vanessa. And thank you, Ashley and Ken, for such a warm welcome. And so glad to be here with Antioch and to see this convergence of Antioch and Deeptime. I recognize the number of Deeptime people here as well, and others we don't know. And we're so glad you came together for this community conversation. And we would like it to be a conversation. Jennifer and I will present short pieces. We'll interweave that with interactions with you all. And I hope we'll have a rich and vibrant discussion about vital issues. And as Vanessa pointed out, about some new perspectives that are coming at this time. Jennifer, do you want to say any introductory words, or would you like me to start in?
Yeah, I think you should just launch right in, Steve. This is great.
Sure. So the perspective I would like to share with you is this perspective of deep time. And essentially, we're at a time, as we all know, where we have both a global crisis and a global opportunity. And what I feel and what many people feel we need at this time is a global vision and a global framework for action. Now, as an astronomer, I'm sensitized to the universe and its wisdom. That's particularly my wisdom channel. And so when I look out at the stars and I look out at this 13.8 billion year cosmic process that we call the universe, I see that as a wisdom tradition. I see that as a thread of experience that has been 13.8 billion years in the making that has led to this moment. There's something to be gained from that, from studying the aspects and dynamics of the universe, from learning something from them, and applying those cosmic perspectives to our on-the-ground everyday lives and in our communities and the global culture. So I'm going to illustrate many of these principles by example. I'm just going to share my screen right here. And I want to start with this wonderful image that many of you may have seen from the James Webb Telescope. This is the James Webb Deep Field. It's an image of an area of the sky about the size of a grain of sand held at arm's length. And it contains thousands and thousands of galaxies. In fact, pretty much every dot in this image is essentially a galaxy. Now, these galaxies are at different distances, and so we're seeing them at different times in cosmic history. If you can see my cursor, these whitish galaxies here are part of a relatively close cluster, relatively close, which means 4.6 billion light years away. So the light from this cluster began when the Earth, Sun, and planets were beginning to form. These other galaxies are at much further distances, varying distances as far away as 13.1 billion years. So in other words, we're seeing a cosmic history of the universe from 4.6 billion years ago back to 13.1 billion years ago. So back to very much the very beginning. And so what we essentially see is a tunnel of cosmic development, right? We see that we don't live in a static universe, but we live in one that's cosmically dynamic and changing. So we don't live so much in a universe as in a field of cosmogenesis, right? A field that is constantly giving birth to new possibilities over time. And our current situation, our current bodies, the Earth environment, this conversation is one of those possibilities that has been given birth to over 13.8 billion years. In astronomy, we look at this as the history of the cosmos, that there are different stages of development that the cosmos went through. There were crises, there were cataclysms, there were births, there were creative, generative moments. So we see this almost as a story, right? It's like, well, what happened then? And what happened then? And how did the universe overcome that situation? Well, Jennifer's books are a wonderful example of this, told in a very accessible way. But of course, don't let this textbook image be misleading for you. It wasn't a linear process by any means. And so I like this image here where the entire history is represented by a logarithmic spiral, where you have this flaring forth in the beginning, and it spirals around to develop stars, and then galaxies, and then clusters, and then planets, and here we are to the sun, and then the Earth, and the moon forms, and then the whole pageant and history of life, all the way up to this moment, sort of spiral dynamics that are taking place, where things are creatively evolving and complexifying and changing over time. So cosmogenesis is not a one-time event, but it's an ongoing process that we are in the midst of. Another example from the James Webb Telescope is this incredible image of the Carina Nebula. This is a nebula, which is a cloud of gas and dust, which is giving birth to new stars. And the baby shining bright, brilliant stars up here have basically taken the nebula, absorbed it into themselves, and formed the star field from the nebula. So what we see here is both a process of cosmic birth, but also a process of cosmic transformation. So the nebula over time transforms itself into something new. This is a principle I think we can take heart in at this time, and that we are in a situation now where a great transformation is being called for. Not transcendence. We don't have to go to Mars. We don't have to go in some virtual reality, but we need to transform in relationality with the entire situation that we're a part of, which means the entire living Earth community, which means the community of all the peoples around the world that struggle, the ecosystems, the entire Earth as a whole is the stage and the context for this transformational process that is being called for. And we have examples of this from the universe. Just a few more examples, and then Jennifer will build on this. This is another image from the James Webb. You can tell I'm very excited about the James Webb images. This is a galaxy cluster called Stephan's Quintet. And essentially these 4 galaxies here, these ones here, are all interacting with each other. And what it's showing us is that this principle of dynamic interactivity is part of the transformational process. So look at these 2 galaxies here. They're in a cosmic embrace. You can see these threads of gas are almost embracing the nuclei of these galaxies. And the galaxies are transforming through this process of relationality. So relationality is a transformative process in this deep time perspective. And look what's happening. These galaxies are coming together, they're transforming their own nature, and they're giving birth to something new through that interactivity. Every little dot of red here is where new stars are being born. So new types of cosmic creativity are being activated through this interaction, interrelatedness. So it shows that interrelatedness is the name of the game on a cosmic scale, and relational transformation is also the way of the universe. And then just one more. This is one that came out a few weeks ago. People may not have seen it. This is called the Cartwheel Galaxy. And what has happened here, and we don't exactly know how this happened, but perhaps one of these 2 galaxies was the culprit, but this galaxy was massively impacted by another galaxy passing through it. And what's happened is that it's now shimmering with spokes of star formation as a result of this. So you might pause and reflect, was there ever an example or a situation in your life where you were impacted by an encounter with another that left you shimmering with something new? This cartwheel is an example of this. I love that there's spokes of shimmering excitedness. I mean, literally the gas is being excited by this interaction and is giving birth to new stars. So we have these incredible examples of cosmic relationality, cosmic transformation, cosmogenesis. These deep time perspectives are all around us. I mean, I give cosmic examples out deep in space, but remember that the Earth is also a cosmic system embedded in this as well. So these are cosmic examples, but they're also all around us at the same time. So Jennifer, I'll pass it to you at this point.
Great, thank you, Steve. It's great to be here. It's great to see other members of the Deep Time community here and to meet new people. Very exciting. It's so exciting to be working with the Antioch community. Thank you so much, Vanessa, Ashley, and Ken. So I'm going to talk a little bit following up on Steve's comments, and then we'll have a discussion, and then Steve and I will speak a little bit more, and then we'll have a discussion again. Okay, so. So just to take what Steve's been saying and how we can apply what we learn from the universe. So if we look at the universe like as a teacher, what can we gain from that? And these are 4 deep time principles. We have others, but these are the ones I'm just going to touch on today that relate to this. And that is learning from the universe. One is context, matrix, another is matrix. The third is subjectivity, and the 4th is action. So what do we mean by that? Well, we ask the question, what is our largest context? Our very largest context. You know, most of the time we're operating like, you know, within our neighborhood or within our community or within our country and looking all at this terrible news that's going on everywhere. But what is the largest context of all that we're part of? It's the universe. And the universe is evolving. And humans have only discovered this within the last 100 years, that actually the cosmos is evolving. It's not just life is evolving, but the whole thing is evolving. The whole universe is a single entity that is transforming. So what if leadership starts with loving and understanding the biggest context that we're part of, namely the universe? So context, we're talking about space and we're talking about time, the bigness of space and the concept of time, that there's a past, a present, and a future. Another deep time principle that we go into is matrix. And this has to do with what Steve was talking about regarding relationality, that everything is related to everything else right now, in the here and now. So the trees relating to the oxygenated atmosphere, the animals relating to that. Inside our own bodies, we have communities within communities within communities, the microbiome in our intestine. Everything is relational. And we're learning so much about this in a course that we're offering right now on the Deeptime Network in quantum wisdom with physicist Sarbmeet Kanwal, which is absolutely fantastic. And this idea of relationality was the theme we are discussing this week. Then a third deep time principle has to do with subjectivity. And that is, what's the interiority? What's going on inside of us? Not just what's happening on the outside in terms of behavior, but what's happening on the inside? How are we experiencing life? Are we becoming more alive, or are we becoming dead? Are we becoming more alive? Is what we're doing enlivening us? If that's happening, then that's what we want, obviously. So deep time perspective and principles is about bringing about more life, more capacity. And that's not just a human thing, but this is happening at all levels. The whole universe has subjectivity. What do we mean by that? We mean it has this capacity to create new things. And it's been doing that from the very beginning. And our own creative capacity is part of this larger field of vast creativity. And then action. So this has to do with like a philosophy of action. What is a philosophy of action inside of an evolving universe? How do we attune ourselves to this larger, the larger cosmos, which is evolving? And how does that, by coming into attunement with the cosmos, we come into our own fulfillment? So both are happening at the same time. It's all part of a single entity that is evolving. And so now let's just take a few minutes to give people a chance to react to the idea of what, let's see, we wrote down the question. Let me just get to it. The question is, what's arising for you as you look at the James Webb Space Telescope images and see yourself as part of a 13.8 billion year story that's continuing with you? You know, you are part of the story. You're not just in the story, you are the story. You are the growing tip. I think it was you, Lisa, wasn't it? In your comments, who said, I'm the growing tip. Do I have that right? Did I remember that right? Yeah, why don't you say, Lisa, what you said in your comments?
I said, I'm the tip of the evolving universe. We all are.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah. So if anybody else wants to jump in here or put something in the chat box, please do. This is a community conversation, so we want to encourage that.
And I've put the prompt in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Mary Ann.
Well, what happens for me when I look at the Webb telescope images is it's this wonderful experience of holding paradox, that simultaneous feeling of, ooh, I'm teeny tiny small in all of this expanse, and at the same time to paraphrase Walt Whitman, I am much larger than I thought, that I am the expanse and I'm the teeny tiny. And I love that the paradox, holding that paradox, both are true.
Thank you so much, Marianne. It's interesting that you bring that up, Marianne, because we have some secondary teachers, who are teaching the cosmic story to teenagers. And what you just said is something that often comes up in those conversations. And it's very meaningful for them to, at the same time, hold this idea of being small and humble, and at the same time being special. And what it took for me to be here right now, is a phenomenal story and reality. And for these teenagers to come to that is very, very moving. And for all of us, not just for teenagers. Jim, did I see your hand up?
Yes. I'd like to repeat something that I heard Stephen say in something I watched last week, I think. I am the universe evolving. Really like that.
Yeah.
That's really an affirmation to spend time with, right? I am the universe evolving. I mean, just to walk around in your day, just to say that and just have it go deep.
I've been spending a lot of time with it since I heard it.
Thank you. And Shirley also speaks. I just want to read something from the chat.
Oh yeah.
Where she says, I think it's comforting to know that as I am evolving, so is my greater environment, and the universe is doing the same. So as we go through our personal challenges, that's also a cosmic challenge at the same time. Right? The universe struggles on cosmic scales and personal scales, and the universe triumphs on cosmic scales and personal scales. So it's good to kind of affirm that relationality between what we consider the little, or the personal and the cosmic, that they're not separate. And Carol Jean has her hand up. Welcome, CJ.
Thank you. I have the paradox within me of being so excited about this evolving universe and being a part of it. And then looking at Earth and think, how can we get a telescope 1 million miles up in the air and not get along with our neighbors across the street? It just is beyond my comprehension.
Well, and Carol Jean, on that topic, sometimes we need to take a step back and look at the larger perspective. And people's comments in the beginning, I think, were speaking to that, right? Beauty, awestruck, wonder. When we reflect on that as a global community, what does that do to us? What field does that generate from which we begin to relate from? So if we begin from the experience of awe, I think we automatically bridge a lot of divisiveness that might otherwise be there. So it creates not only a new framework, but a new experience to begin from for relating. Right? If we begin with awe, where does that take us?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve, I see that Nora has a comment in the chat box that maybe you could speak to. She says, I am trying to understand the concept of the telescope images displaying events over a vast period of time. Deep time images due to the time needed for light to travel.
Isn't that amazing that because the speed of light is constant, it takes different amounts of time for light to reach us from different distances. And so we have laid out in front of us the entire history of the cosmos, its entire story, from the immediacy of where we are right now to the moon, which is 1 light second away, to the sun, 8 light minutes away, to galaxies, all the way back to, the flaring forth some 13.8 billion years ago. So what an incredible book, novel, story we have laid out in front of us with our telescopes. We can look through the telescopes and we can read the history of the universe. What an incredible opportunity that is. I mean, to have that just laid out every night in the night sky. I mean, I just love that. And to recognize that we're the latest chapter in the story, as are the trees and the global situation and everything around us. Now, how can we tell what is how old? That's a whole nother question that we'd have to unpack the science for. We don't have time for that right now. But we don't often know the exact ages, but we know some developmental sequence that took place. Just to touch on one brief example, in that James Webb Deep image, one thing we find is that the galaxies, which are from a long time ago, are different than the galaxies that are from more recent times. So galaxies themselves have evolved over time. So we see evolution in action on a cosmic scale in these images. And I'll leave it there because we can go on for hours about how we know that, other exciting things.
Thank you, Steve. So maybe Steve and I will talk now for a little bit, and then we'll have a conversation again.
Great.
Okay. So one person who has very deeply inspired the work on the Deeptime network is Thomas Berry. And he was a Passionist priest, but he didn't call himself a theologian. He called himself a geologian because he was looking at the large arc of history of Earth. And he saw how, it has these geological time frame. And that spoke to him very, very deeply. And he saw the importance of studying the Earth itself, studying the universe itself, learning from the universe and the Earth, and then placing ourselves inside of that context. So he's the one who coined the term the Ecozoic. Just to move this. And the Ecozoic is an era in which humans live in a mutually enhancing relationship with the Earth. So let's situate that inside. Okay, why is that doing that? There we go. Inside the story of Earth. So here we have the birth of the Earth 4.5 billion years ago. And then this is where we are right now. We are in the terminal phase of the Cenozoic. What's the Cenozoic? The Cenozoic began 65 million years ago with the extinction of dinosaurs. And the Cenozoic is known as the age of mammals because this is when mammals effloresced. They moved everywhere and they changed into so many different species. But now we're in the midst of a massive extinction. And so this is bringing the Cenozoic era to a close. So what will come next, of course, is the big question. Will it be an Ecozoic or will it be something else? And in all of Thomas Berry's writings, he talks about either we're going to go through the future together or we perish. So the Ecozoic is really an imperative. We have to go to the Ecozoic. How are we going to do that? Well, one thing is now that we have this story of the universe and the Earth, it's enabling humans to come to a higher level of consciousness and can help us to create the Ecozoic. So one thing we notice when we look back, through all the chaos and the trials and travails that the universe has gone through, it's had the ingredients that it needed at the time to transform itself to the next phase. And so knowing this story today that we're learning may be one of the important ingredients that we need in order to create an Ecozoic era. So we might look at the story of the universe as a functional cosmology for birthing the Ecozoic. What is a functional cosmology? A functional cosmology gives us the energy. It gives us the energy. It gives us the will. It gives us the excitement, and it guides us in how to create the future. That's what makes it functional. It's not just a pretty story. This is something that we have to have in order to be able to do what we need to do. So it's absolutely crucial. And I just want to do a quote from Brian Swim, and then Steve will speak. So long as the notion of a passive universe has a hold on our minds, we will fail to appreciate that reality comes forth out of the ongoing dynamic and creative relationships between the whole and the parts. So we need to understand the whole. That's the cosmic evolution, the evolution of Earth, and see ourselves and everything else inside of that bigger whole. And I want to thank Sarvmeet for this quote. This was in the class last night, so that was great. Okay, Steve.
Just to build on that, Cosmogenesis was not a one-time event, but it's an ongoing process, an ongoing creative activity that we're participating in. And that cosmogenic activity is interrelating the whole and the parts in this larger framework. That's what a functional cosmology does, is it interrelates and it orientates the parts and the whole together. So I'd like to just give some examples of what does a functional cosmology look like applied in a leadership context, right? How can this be an inspiration for a new kind of leadership? We've seen many examples, historical or otherwise, of traditional leadership, which tends to be very hierarchical, very based on the past, based on tried and true methods or systems and that kind of thing. But what is a functional cosmology give us in terms of a new way of leadership? Well, first of all, the context for leadership is the context of the whole, right? We're not trying to lead from any particular place for any particular part's benefit, but cosmically informed deep time leadership includes the context of the whole and the parts together. And so the Earth is a whole complete system as our framework, right? We begin with the sense of the Earth as a whole and complete in itself. So what benefits the Earth and its life systems as a whole is what is needed to move forward within the context of the Earth community. So in any given example from a human perspective, right, does this action lead to the benefit of the entire Earth community? That can be a guideline for action or a guideline for leadership. And also, leadership in this deep time sense is happening everywhere, right? Because where's the leading edge of the universe? It's every single place in the universe. It's in the Andromeda Galaxy. It's in the Earth's crust. It's in each one of us's decision-making process. It's in the birds, the animals, right? The Earth and the cosmos are leading the way in every point within the system. It's an interrelated system. And so that context of distributed leadership, where the whole, the parts are in good relationship with each other, is one which is very resonant in this deep time perspective. The other framework Jennifer mentioned is this framework of matrix, right? Leadership acknowledges that we are embedded in a whole series of relationships. We're in webs of interrelationality. And so we are affecting others as we are being affected. So our relationality is crucial here, right? In fact, the relationships are in some ways more important than the entities which are relating. And so we acknowledge that our interrelatedness with the entire system and each of the decisions that we make. This is a new kind of leadership where the leader isn't isolated at the top, but is being impacted and influenced by the whole. So there's a synergy and a back and forth framework here. And then Jennifer also on the deep time perspective of subjectivity, right? Leadership acknowledges, as Thomas Berry said, that the universe is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. So in other words, there's not dead stuff out there, but each of the entities in the Earth system and in the cosmic larger context has its own subjective perspective, and that needs to be acknowledged and engaged with as a source of wisdom and inspiration. So the subjectivity of the whole and the subjectivity of each of the parts is part of the context of leadership. All right. So for example, who's being impacted in this picture? Right? The human and the horse. Right? You can't say that one or the other is impacting, but both are being impacted. Right? There's subjectivity interrelating here. And then we need to ask the question, what is deep time action? What is right action that's aligned with the dynamics of the cosmos? Well, it's action which is aligned with the natural forces and dynamics of the cosmos, right? Just as water follows the natural course of the landscape and moving downhill, if we can study the universe, if we can study the ecosystems, if we can study the Earth community, we can see what are its dynamics and what are its natural tendencies, and then use those as guidelines for leadership. Because if we can align with the natural systems that surround us and that inform us, both in a cosmic and more local context, and if we can see which way they're naturally tending, if we align with those, we will naturally synergize with and benefit and enhance the Earth community. So this idea of deep time action isn't something that's isolated, but it's embedded within a larger Earth community context, and it seeks the health of the whole, right? Humans and individual humans can't be healthy in a sick ecosystem, right? The health of the ecosystem is part of the health of humanity, and the health of humanity benefits the health of the ecosystem, right? In a good relational way. So I want to give examples of how people are actually taking this into action right now. And as Jennifer said, Thomas Berry spoke about the Ecozoic is this period of mutually enhancing relationship between humans and the Earth. Well, we have examples around the world of people who are doing this right now. So I'll give you some examples, and then we'll open things up for a global discussion. We have, okay, I'm missing a slide here. Let's see. Okay, well, we have colleagues in the Philippines who have begun to apply these deep time perspectives in developing new ecological learning centers. So we have our colleagues, Father John Layden and Sister Bing Carranza, who are working within a religious context, but also within relationships with local communities. And they've developed a center in conjunction with the perspectives of Laudato Si, where they are educating, they're doing eco restoration, and they're doing it on a tremendous scale in the Philippines. The Philippines is one of the leading edge places where these deep time perspectives are really finding deep roots. And they were presenters for us in the last iteration of the Deep Time Leadership Program, really inspiring what they're doing. As is Father Robert Athikal in India, who 30 years ago helped found a student-led movement called Taro Mitra. Taro Mitra means Friends of Trees, where they began with a rice field, and they developed an entire ecological learning center and a student-led movement that spans India with over 2,000 schools and 2 million students, and is based on not only an ecological and deep time perspective, but on the ground ecological action. And so you can see the students are engaged, right? Literally building things brick by brick into new frameworks where they are across India. So tremendously inspiring. And he began this with a rice field, right? So never underestimate the power of a deep time perspective. Also in our last leadership program, one of our graduates, Katrina Favish from New Zealand, is a Sister of Mercy, and her community there is developing a new center for ecological practice and action based on deep time principles and in conjunction with the local indigenous population, right? So the Maori and the religious communities are coming together to create this new ecological center. So it's a beautiful example of synergy on so many different levels. And we see this as well in our programs, that many people from around the world who are involved in religious communities are looking for a form of religious reform. And how do they contextualize faith and meaning in a larger context? And the deep time perspective is one way they found to bring these two together. One of our other graduates in the recent leadership class, MJ Zimmerman, is a therapist in New Mexico, and she's creating cosmically inspired community rituals, which are inspired by her work with the Diné and Navajo people, the Blessing Way ceremonies. So she sees these as ways of bringing together individual, community, and planetary healing in these rituals. And then also we have to highlight Lisa Burney, who's here as well, one of our other deep leadership graduates. She has lived with chronic pain for many years, and she's found the deep time perspective to be a source of healing, transformation, and inspiration that has also impacted her therapy clients and her therapy practice. And she may want to say something about this in the conversation. No pressure if she doesn't, but you can see how a deep time perspective has deep roots in so many different applications. And then finally, one of our other graduates, Tara, is exploring the idea of how do we create living communities from a deep time perspective, right? Communities in which humans are integrated with the natural world and deep time principles. And she's exploring this and how to bring this about as well. So this deep time perspective is something that's calling forth the wisdom of the universe, but it's being applied on the ground in so many different contexts around the world. And so we continue to be inspired by the power of this perspective and also all the creative ways it finds application. And so I'm just going to pause there and bring it back to you, Jennifer, I think.
Okay. So should I say something about the leadership program and then we'll have a conversation, right?
Sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me just share the screen. Okay. So this is our leadership program, Deep Time Leadership and Well-Being Program. And, you know, the word well-being is just so important here because this brings about well-being. And it's one of the things that we keep hearing from people. They say things like, I finally feel like I'm at home. We hear this all the time. So it's a 9-month program. It's starting September 21st. And I'll just go right through this very quickly. Again, this operative question, what if leadership starts with loving and understanding our universe? So we include a new way of leading and being based on cutting edge ideas in cosmology and earth wisdom. We look at what is deep time leadership? What are those capacities? What are those capabilities in terms of perspective and attitudes and self-awareness and growth, and how it activates others, how it excites other people. And we have many wonderful presenters. Let me just go through here. Steve Martin, of course, and me, and Amaro, and Brand Swim. Sarmeet Kanwal will be teaching. Cliff Berrien does an amazing job on the work of Dr. Barbara Holmes and her book, Race and Cosmos. And Margie Abbott is from Australia. She does amazing work with meditations. Dwayne and Colleen Elgin. Sam Guanracha, who composed the Emergent Universe Oratorio. Artist Angela Mano. Orla Hazra, who is written extensively on religious education and how this relates to what cosmology is doing for us, which is very similar, of course. Matthew Cobb on adaptive leadership, Marion Rowe, who's here today. Kim, who is a psychologist and also happens to be Steve's wife. And Lisa, yay, Lisa. And so on. Matthew Fox will be in this program too. And Bill Halal, who's a very interesting person who will be looking at technology, the importance of technology. He comes from a business and military background. Mary Evelyn Tucker, who I'm sure many of you know. Yona French Hawk, who is a full-blooded Cherokee wisdom keeper, who has led us in very extraordinary rituals. So let me go back to here for a minute. Leadership with the Ecozoic and diversity, equity, and inclusion and personal well-being as our omega point. So it's pulling all these things together, just incredible. You know, the Ecozoic, social justice, and personal well-being. It all comes together. People follow their allurements. So let me just go down to here. There are 3 modules. The first module is introducing the new cosmology. The second is applying the new cosmology. The third is a deep time leadership practicum where people do projects. And here we're exploring, you know, what is the difference between a traditional and a deep time leader, our theory of change, and so on. There are lots of comments here from people who have done our programs. Let me also just show you, these are people who got certified in the last leadership program. As you can see, they're from all over the world. Ambi from Manila, Cami, California, Hasina Patel from South Africa, Arjuri from Ohio. Seema is indigenous from India. Corinna is from Germany. Odile, who is French, but she's in Texas right now. And Judith Keller in Australia. Jenny Bowler, Australia, lives in Canada, Philippines, and so on. There's Lisa. Lisa got certified. And here's Clifford. He got certified in the last program. Okay. All right, let me just go back here. We are going to have some introductory sessions, like info sessions. If anybody would like to come, we'd be happy to send that information, but you can also find it right here. The list of info sessions. So you can come and ask us more questions if you'd like. It's right here. So this is all on our website. So let's have a conversation. I'm just curious what all of you felt when you were looking at those stories of what, how people are applying this work in so many different ways. Oh, and I just have to mention, Karen Cudaby is here in this room, and she has developed amazing spirals. Do you have one sitting right there that you could just hold up and show everybody? No, you don't. Oh, where did she go? There she is.
If you were going to take a break, I could sure bring one for the second go around. But Jennifer, I actually would love to say something if since I've got the open mic and my husband has stopped mowing the lawn for a second.
Karen, do you mind if one moment, I know Karen as well, just one quick mention is with the program, the leadership program, the IMA offers prior learning credits, so you can go through the program and also receive credits should a master's degree be part of your plan in your inquiries. So want to make sure that's tight in there. But
wow.
Karen, I'd love to give you the floor. You always have powerful things to say.
Thank you for saying that, for jumping in there, Vanessa.
Yeah.
We need to put that on our website, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what a privilege to come in this moment from really, two lineages. One being the Deeptime network, actually prior, way prior to that, I would say, from a lot of work that many of us were doing before the Deeptime network ever came together. But in addition, meeting Vanessa through the Bright Futures Now network, which I'm also active in. But what I wanted to just add that I sense might be helpful in terms of maybe adding yet another portal into the enlivening sense that we get when we touch into some of the aspects of the universe story that I know Brian Swim has been so articulate in. I wanted to bring in that whole topic of centration. That is one of the powers of the universe, where every one of us is a center. And I know, Stephen, you were talking about every one of us is a leading edge, but every one of us is also at the origin of the universe. And as Brian said, the universe can never act except from centers, which means that action is required from each of us, and we are each a center of the universe, as opposed to being anywhere on the outside looking in. So there's something about having a sense of what it means to be in the center of the universe, with everything else also being a center of the universe, and And we are related and can call upon the wisdom and all the relationships that the entire universe gives us. We always belong inside the story. We're never on the outside looking in. There's just so many layers that are a direct contradiction to the culture that we are raised in, which is you're always on the margin unless you have the right qualities like, you know, brilliance and money and all of that. It's, oh no, just by virtue of you being here alive today, you are a center that the universe depends upon for action, for bringing forth our gifts. So I just wanted to add that to the many layers that you, Jennifer, and Stephen have already said. There's something about centration and agency that I just want to throw in here.
Thank you so much for that, Karen. Because
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, I really resonate with what you're saying, because each of us is the portal through which the cosmic lineage, wisdom, and guidance comes through. And so each of us is a place where the Ecozoic will be born from. It's not an era that's going to come from somewhere else. It's going to be born from each of us through our own guided action in alignment with the universe. And so this is where I feel that allurement is really, you know, one of the other powers, this power of allurement. What are you naturally drawn towards? Because that which you're drawn towards isn't coming from you. There's a 13.8 billion year lineage of that longing. And so I love that we're talking about an individualized master's program, right? How can I make a program my own, right? How can I find the work that's mine to do? And this is a very strong theme that we develop in the leadership program. It's like, what's your allurement, and can we sustain that and support that? So I love that Antioch has created this kind of individualized master's learning pathway, but that's also our way forward for leadership, right? Your allurement is your stepping stone to leadership. That's yours to lead. That's the calling for you, right? So you're the origin point of that. So that's so powerful, Karen, bringing the idea of centration, that each of us is a center, and we're a center of wisdom, right? Each of us is a source of inspiration for each other, because the things that come out of our mouths, they're worth listening to. That's the cosmos speaking, right? When we're together in this larger perspective. So what a wonderful conversation we're having.
I'd like to add a couple of things in reflection to what Stephen and Karen is saying. I think what we're thirsty for as a community is the agency that we have to influence our communities, ourselves. So, you know, I'm really resonating with that. And I think that the concepts that Deeptime is kind of articulating, it's just giving us a framework and ways to continue conversing about it at a very large scale, but in a way that isn't disorienting, because it's so visceral in our bodies as well. So I'm seeing that element. But I want to bring up a second point. I noticed that as you were sharing the communities that you're involved with, you're involved with a diversity of communities. We're talking about indigenous communities. We're talking about communities in the Philippines. And I think that as we're visualizing what this next, we're inviting this era, it makes sense to me that it's this collaboration of different cultures and supporting how plural we are. But that it's not something in the background, it's something we have to bring in the forefront, that this diversity is a big part of it. You know, and where are the communities that are silent, and whose cosmologies and ways of being and seeing are silenced. And I think what the more that we draw connections with these communities, and I see Deeptime kind of working with that, that is something to trust. Anything that's a monoculture is not something I'm going to trust. But I think that I think we're in the right path cosmically, and people who are here in this discussion, and anyone who's interested in this work, you're on the right track when we're thinking about the big picture, and you're thinking about cultures, and you're just seeing this plurality and different ways of being and existing in the world. That continues to resonate with me.
Yeah, for me as well, because we live in a universe that selects for difference and diversity. I mean, look around and you see that we're part of 10 million different species. Clearly, it's something the universe likes, is this diversity. And so it's naturally selecting for that. And so when we're acknowledging diversity, we're aligning with the dynamics of the universe. Just one other thing I want to say is that Thomas Berry said, in order to give birth to the Ecozoic, we need a fourfold path of wisdom, right? We need the wisdom of science, right? What this modern cosmology is bringing us. We need the wisdom of the traditional religious institutions and spiritual paths. We need the wisdom of women and the deep feminine. We also need the wisdom of the indigenous peoples and the peoples of the earth. That these are all four paths that we need, for complete engagement with the Ecozoic. And so this idea of this plurality of wisdom from so many different channels is something that's very much embraced in the deep time perspective. So thank you for speaking to that, Vanessa. And I see that Shirley has her hand up. So welcome,
Yes.
Shirley.
Thank you, Stephen. This conversation reminds me of an event I went to at Seattle University during my undergrad studies where they had televised the Pope's message to the whole world at the time. And there was a priest from the Philippines discussing his perspective on the Pope's call to environmental revolt, I want to call it, like for all of us as a community of believers to go back to the love of the earth and taking care of the earth and being good stewards of the earth. And at the time I heard this presentation from the priests at the time and the work he was doing ecologically in the Philippines, I was so inspired because the Philippines is my motherland and it is my home, and it feels really good to hear that there are parts of the islands being restored and being taken care of because so much damage has happened to the islands. And I just love that the conversation talks about this fourfold approach. I so appreciate, Stephen, you mentioning that, because as I was seeing the images earlier from a scientific perspective, I'm like, having a background of a believer in traditional religion and yet evolving in my spirituality to more aligning it with cosmology and trying to find the middle ground of making those two beliefs and those two, what Western American culture tries to be opposing beliefs, to merge, I believe has happened in this conversation for me. And I so appreciate this group sharing about all the diverse projects, as Vanessa pointed out, across the world happening with deep time theories, I don't know what we want to call it, principles at the center of it all. So thank you so much, Jennifer and Stephen, for bringing such a depth of knowledge and a viewpoint of the world that I had not considered. And I've just now been open to, and I feel so honored to have been blessed with.
Thank you so much,
Shirley. It's interesting that over a third of the participants in the leadership program were Catholic sisters, priests, ministers. So there's a deep, deep yearning, for this integration. As Thomas Berry said, the old story doesn't work anymore, and we don't have a new story yet. So we are right in that ferment. This is the frothing ferment that we're in, is creating a new story that does this integration.
And the story is both radically expansive and radically inclusive, right? So all these perspectives are included and have a home in the story. And I also want to say that, Jennifer, I think we had over a dozen people from the Philippines in the last leadership program. And it's so wonderful to have that perspective.
We had 16 people.
16 people from all over the Philippines, all the different islands. Really, really beautiful.
And we already have 6 coming in for the upcoming program already. We had 108 people from 13 countries around the world in the last program. So really, we love the diversity. Every continent was represented except Antarctica. So, and hopefully we'll get that one in the next round. So we'll see. But beautiful. CJ has her hand up, and I know that we're coming towards a soft closing at the same time.
First, I can say I did the last leadership program, and it's an incredible experience. But the second, I wanted to say, the new initiative on the part of the collaboration between the UN Environment Program and the World Parliament of Religions, which is entitled Faith. It's a call for faith initiatives to come together for all faith traditions. Faith for Earth, a call for action is their document. Okay, it's available to download online. It's like 184 pages. But I just finished a 2-month program with them. It was a pilot program to see how we could use that document to get people to come together. And the whole idea is that what they're saying is that what is missing from all of what we're talking about in terms of the environment is the moral voice. And that the moral voice isn't held by any one tradition. It is held by multiple traditions.
Right.
You know, and as I listened to you speaking tonight, I thought this just flows right into the work that we're trying to do with that.
Oh,
You know, it just takes them another step beyond where they are. So
well, we should talk more about that, CJ.
I would love to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
thank
that'd
you
be
very
really
much.
good.
All right, we want to honor people's times or their time, and we're offering a soft closing where perhaps Jennifer, Stephen, if you want to mention any last words, and then we can stop the recording. But I talked to the presenters earlier, and we're okay with staying a little longer if there's some more chatting that wants to be done. But please honor your time if you need to go. So again, this is a collaboration with Antioch University, the Individualized Masters of Arts, in collaboration with the Deeptime Network. We, in a little Venn diagram, we both passionately believe in just evolving yourself slowly. And that can happen in an academic setting. The IMA does do that. So any words, Jennifer, Stephen, before I stop the recording?
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say, Vanessa, I just so appreciate the voice that I'm hearing from you. You know, I'm not used to hearing this voice in academia, and it's just terrific. I mean, I know it was Brian Tucker who brought us together, and I just am really, really grateful for this.
And I just want to say, you know, I'm so appreciating the conversation. Right? I love the conversation and the relationality that's happening here in this cosmic context, because I'm learning something, I'm being impacted. I'm glad to be sharing what I'm passionate about, and coming together in this way, I think, is giving birth to something new. And I'm always excited to be a part of something like this.
Thank you so much for your words. And yes, academia can be full of heart and passion, and that's what the IMA strives to be. We're within a social justice organization, and we believe in destinies and wisdom. So thank you for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.